AVP Wargamers! How's it going? This is Jason. Today I'm going to talk about building a better world. I'm traveling right now and I've been brainstorming all kinds of ideas for this episode, and I just had to get this filmed, and what better place to do it than out in the real world? So in this video, I'm going to talk about building a better world, and in the description link, I'm going to put a link to a video here on YouTube of somebody who does consulting for video game industry and other types of big firms on topographical statistics and world building. And it's a really interesting keynote. I highly recommend to watch it. But anyways, I've got some notes here about world building, and I think this is really important when any of you guys out there are gaming, whether you're running your own campaigns, whether you're a D&D game master or dungeon master, or doing hosting events and trying to create worlds. And I feel like a lot of movies really get this wrong, especially the Alien franchise recently. I don't feel like their world building skills have been that good. Kind of ironic about the whole Weyland-Yutani building of better worlds, right? But I digress. Anyways, so building a better world. First of all, it's all about realization, not realism. So if you have a world that you're designing, no matter what setting it is, make sure that the realization of that world is complete. It doesn't have to have realism. And I feel like a lot of people get too caught up in the realism, when you can still have a fantastical world that doesn't make 100% logical sense. But I feel like it is important to focus on the realization of that whole world more than the realism, because if you can sell your audience on the realization of this world that you're building, it'll feel much more real than if you're trying to use the actual real world as a crutch, because that could actually limit your ability to realize your whole vision. Complexity. The complexity of your world, I think, is really important. It has to have at least a little bit of depth to it, so that there's more intrigue and more interesting things that the players can think about and that the other people can think about in your world, such as like the elements, the air, the weather, the chemical makeup of your planet or place that you're having your adventures set in. Because, like, especially in like the Alien movies, you have a prison planet, and then you have LV-426, which is a rock. I mean, it's not that interesting. It doesn't have many levels to it. And the one thing that really bothers me is the movie Prometheus and Alien Covenant. You've got this whole other civilization on this planet. They do not explore any of the lore. They just say, "Oh, this was just a weapons testing planet, and this is just like the engineer's homeworld." But you don't see any of the world other than like one locale. And I feel like the characters just completely miss out on that exploration. So again, I just want to go into some of the complexity of your planet. You got to have, the elements that make up your planet, like what kind of air, the animals breathe, what kind of gravity you have, the weather, what kind of chemical makeup is the environment that you're setting everything in. Then you have the history and the lore, like what is the history of your planet. Even if it's a newly discovered planet like LV-426, which was a rock on the movie Aliens, even if it's a new planet like that really is just literally a rock out in space, how long have your colonists been there? Like, what are they doing? How are they going to turn this rock into a breathable planet? Why has that planet been chosen for this stuff to happen? Then you have the life forms, the plant, the flora, the fauna, and all that make up your world. If you have a rich world, what is the ecosystem like? What are your creatures doing in this world? What is their purpose, and how do they live with one another, and how does the balance work? And then you have, if you have like societies of humans or other creatures, what is their ethnicity diversity within those races? What are their religion? What are their politics and resources? What's their society? How does their society work? You can base this off a lot of stuff we have here on Earth, like different types of political structures or castes or tribes or governments. There's hundreds of ways to do that. Then also, what are the physics and of your world? Like, how does Like, is the gravity lighter? Is it heavier? And what does that do to everything on in that world? Um, are there diseases? Are there pathogens? Things that can affect the players or the adventurers? And if so, how does that affect the other um, animals and other things in the planet? So there's a lot of diversity you can put in there. Is there hostilities between different races and creatures? Um, and then what kind of reality are we set in? Is this going to be like a fantasy world where you can use magic and powers like that, or is this more science fiction where it's all based off of real world science and things that are easier to explain? Um, and also, with that being said, you need to leave some mysteries. Like, no real good storytelling is left without mysteries. Even on our own planet that we live on, there's plenty of mystery still to be figured out. Like, we've barely discovered anything that lives in the ocean. I think they said that it was like somewhere between 10 and 20% of the ocean has actually been explored. So that's a lot of territory that hasn't been explored. Um, and you can say a lot with your world without saying anything. If you just give little hints of past cultures or societies or animals or any little piece of evidence, you don't have to tell everybody everything. In fact, you shouldn't. You should leave a lot of it unsaid and allow everybody to discover that world that you've built. It doesn't mean you can't figure everything out for yourself, but it's okay to leave some stuff unsaid. Um, Empty space is waste. I wrote that because if you have an empty space on your planet, that's not that has no purpose, I feel like you've wasted a lot of your world. An example, like in Alien Covenant and in Prometheus, you only focus on that one part of the planet, and there's it's like that was is that the only spot on the whole planet that anybody can go to? Because it feels like a big waste of space if you don't at least hint at what else is there. Um, let's see. Also, the topography and your land masses have to be figured out. Like, draw a map. Do what J.R. Tolkien did. Draw a map of your world or a section of your world, so that you could at least organize in your own mind how things work in this planet. What about fault lines? What about weather patterns? Does the ocean rise in a different way? There's lots of different things you can work into this world to make it unique. um, and study real life and study other planets in our solar system and compare everything. Like, look at all the other planets that are in our solar system and look how different they are and what elements they have, and see if you're going to create another reality that these characters can interact with. Use some of those ideas and compare them. Um, and then look up statistics of different things that make up like a society. If you have a society of creatures or something, how many of them live on that planet? On our planet, we have over 77.2 billion people here living on this planet. That's a lot of different diversity. That's a lot of different cultures. It's a lot of different religions. There's also, even within in their own groups, we have a lot of societies that are divided politically. So there's a lot you could really build on, depending on how big your world is and what you're doing with it. So to bring it all together, what is your narrative goal? The world that you build needs to have a goal in mind to help serve your story. And I feel like a lot of science fiction films, specifically, don't really have that much of a goal in mind for their planets that they have the setting in. And it feels like they could have just had it on Earth, or somewhere nondescript. I feel like there was no real purpose for them to go to that particular world. So no matter what your campaign is, figure out what your goal is with your narrative, and where your character's going, and what are they going to encounter within the environment that they're in. Also, stay in character. Don't do anything that's outside of what is logical for that character to do. Like, if you have a particular society that's prejudiced against a certain thing, it's completely out of their character to accept something outside of themselves. So, like, just think about the narrative of your campaign and stories. Like, example, like orcs and goblins probably won't get along with elves and dwarves. Just like that's just naturally, you'd think it'd be weird if the orcs and goblins were suddenly working with elves. Like, why would they do that? You could, make a story that explains that, but that would be important part of storytelling. You can't just have the elves and orcs working together out of nowhere. So, so think about that. Also, within the lore and your storytelling, you got to tell a story with this. Like, what purpose do the characters in the world have together to tell the story that you want to tell, and how do we keep the players on track with that story? And then you need logical consistency. So, like, if you drop a rock, it's gonna fall. If for some reason you go somewhere else in the world and you drop the rock and it doesn't fall, that's inconsistent. The same thing goes with like and this is a big beef I had with Alien Covenant. It's logically consistent for us to wear protective gear and helmets when we discover a new environment or go into a place that could be that could affect us. So the fact that the Alien Covenant team landed on the planet and they just walk out with helmets on, a lot of people had a problem with that because it was logically inconsistent. Why would we do that? Why wouldn't we take those safety precautions? Because we do that in our current world every day. So really stay in character with those and keep everything logically consistent within the boundaries of your world. And then cultural evidence. Leave cultural evidence. You don't have to explain the entire history of an entire planet. Just like in Lord of the Rings, you had the lore established in the Silmarillion, which wasn't even published till after the Lord of the Rings books came out. So the lore was already set, and there was little hints of that past civilization on the planet that was being explored. So you can do that if you have that kind of thing on your planet. And then create with purpose. Don't just make up things that don't have any purpose. Example, if you're going to have a graveyard and you make little cross gravestones, that's a symbol of Christianity. Does your planet have Christianity in it? Check those facts and check. Don't just put stuff willy nilly that could logically not make sense. So yeah, create everything with purpose. If you're going to have a room full of artifacts, what do those artifacts do? Why are they there? So think about that. A couple of good examples on proper world building would be like the story of Dune. They have now in each example that I'm about to give you, each of these genres have very specific things that they focus on that they do really well. Like in Dune, the things that immediately pop to mind is they have a really good politics going on with all the characters. It's all about the spice and that resource that everybody's fighting over. And there's also a lot of mystery in how the spice works and how the characters do what they do and why things are the way they are. And a lot of those mysteries do get explored. So I feel like Dune does a really good job at that. Warhammer 40K, they excel at the variety of the different races and the different style of play. They also excel at the conflict. Everything has very good conflict and reasons for that conflict, and all the different agendas between the armies. They have each army has a very specific agenda that they're trying to accomplish, and they have such a variety of characters. It's amazing on how well they do that. In the Star Wars universe, Star Wars is such a vast property. It has unlimited amounts of aliens and that kind of stuff. And in fact, it's so vast that it's impossible for the Star Wars universe to have every single world completely fleshed out because they have just so many random aliens. But what they do well is the drama, and they focus on just the specific characters they want to tell the story with, and the fact that the galaxy is so vast that they're able to kind of condense it and focus on just specific locations, and they also really focus on the religion of the Force, and it's more science fantasy in that way. So you have this incredible variety in that world, but it makes sense because it's consistent. There's so much variety. When you go to a planet, there's aliens from hundreds of different worlds. This is so far in the future that the aliens have kind of just mixed with everyone, and so I feel like they did that really well. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has a very, very well placed history. It's a very journey and quest oriented universe, and the camaraderie is very focused on in that world. The camaraderie between characters and how certain rivals overcome the rivalry to become comrades and work together. Game of Thrones, in that world, the complexity is incredible. It's got a very good history set in place with plots within plots within plots and a lot of mystery. And the way they built that world up is you've got all these different groups and all these plots are intertwined, and they really do it well in leaving a lot of the information out so that the mystery unravels slowly as you progress through that story. A very rich world. Another world, which is a little bit more simple, is the world of Narnia. It's an alternate reality, so the laws of reality are quite different in the wardrobe, as they say, and the whole point of Narnia is learning lessons and building up the individual characters, and it's also got a really good history. So that world is built of those things very well. The Walking Dead, which is an alternate reality like setting. It uses alternate history, and without showing the entire world, it focuses on a very small part of a big world, and it focuses on the relationships of the characters. So that kind of world, it's reality with the zombie thing kind of thrown in there, and the way they work out that logic, it's consistent. It's got very good consistency with their logic of, if you get bite or if you die, you turn into a zombie. Like, that's very consistent. And it was only in, I think season 1 where it had a little bit of inconsistencies, and the fans noticed, like they should. And yeah, any kind of world that you're creating, if there's any inconsistency, people can spot it right away, and that's why I feel like things like in the Alien universe are suffering, because there's so much inconsistency between the films, and also just with the logic of the characters as well. So, anyways, that's my short video on how to build a better world, and hopefully, when you do your own gaming, that you can build a better world for your adventures.